Mark Levin here. After any presidential election, I take time to reevaluate my own financial investments. That's why I continue to invest in gold for help with my financial protection. When it comes to gold, I only trust Advantage Gold. They're a top gold company in America, and that's who I turn to for my own gold purchases. Call them now at 800-900-8000. That's 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit. And see if you qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. And tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. I hope you had a great weekend. Well, as you've heard by now, most of you, Judge Chutkan, the federal district judge appointed by Obama, a radical leftist in a black robe, has now dismissed the so-called January 6th case at the request of the rogue unconstitutional prosecutor Jack Smith. She dismissed it about 90 minutes ago. Now, she did it without prejudice at the request of Jack Smith. The reason they did that is because there's some other individuals who may be involved in that case, and that means they might want to leave it open to pursuit. But it'll never happen. When Donald Trump takes over the Department of Justice in a couple of months, the cases will be fully eliminated, and he always has the pardon power. In the Florida case, Smith also moved to have that dismissed. It's in front of a federal appeals court. It was already dismissed. A great, brilliant judge, and she ruled that he was unconstitutionally appointed. And there were others like Landmark Legal Foundation, of which I'm chairman, and as well as two former attorneys general that said Smith's appointment violated the Appointments Clause. And the judge ruled exactly that way. Aileen Cannon. Then we have these state cases. They will eventually die. May take a little longer, depending on how Judge Merchan rules and what President Trump's lawyers do in response. It just depends. And it looks like in Georgia, the appellate court where that case is sitting has cleared the schedule of any oral arguments whatsoever. So it looks to me, if I read the tea leaves, that they're about to kill the case too. Now, no brag, just fact. Those of you who've been listening to this program over the last few years know that I've been right about these cases from day one. I explained that they're rushing to the courthouse because if Donald Trump's elected president, they can't charge him. I pulled out and dusted off the two Department of Justice memos that nobody had been talking about, the one from 1973 and 2000. I've cited them here multiple times. I've cited them on Blaze. I've cited them on Fox. Now, finally, it's in the bloodstream of the media and the chattering classes. That made it impossible to pursue a sitting president. And, of course, Donald Trump won the election, and that's that. That's why they were in a race to the courthouse to influence the election, to interfere with the election. They hoped to take Trump out, to create a constitutional crisis where the Republicans would have to have another convention and choose another nominee. That was their goal, and they failed. They failed because of Donald Trump. We've never seen anybody like him before, and they failed because of you. In the end, you said no. In the end, you were in charge. And so we were right here from day one on every one of these cases, on the unconstitutional appointment, right 100%, right about Manhattan, right about Georgia. Just a matter of time until it was proven. I have to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, this assault on our justice system and our electoral system, the unconstitutional appointment of a so-called special counsel, the abuses of power by the Attorney General and his subordinates, no doubt, and the abuses of power as well when it comes to the courts in Washington, D.C., this can't just be blown off. I do believe the Department of Justice, the incoming new Department of Justice at the highest levels, needs to take a look at this. All the documents must be retained under the Presidential Records Act, even without an order or a demand from Congress or a court or even the incoming administration. Those records are supposed to be protected, as we've now long learned, right? And if they destroyed any records, and if they touch on the classified nature of any documents, well, that's a violation of the Espionage Act. And if they did any of that, or any individual did any of that, they should be pursued. They should be pursued to the full extent of the law, because the sword cuts both ways. And so I think this is very, very important. We'll continue to monitor this. I do want to add a few other things, and then we'll circle back some of these comments by these radical left-wing kook members of the House on what on what had to be done with respect to the Department of Justice. They had no choice. This appointment to the Labor Department, I forget her name, it really doesn't matter, is very troubling to me. Donald Trump picks who he wants, and he'll get who he wants. So my opinion is my opinion. But she's opposed to right to work. What is right to work? A right to work state is a state that says that employees have a right to go to work even if they don't want to join a union. I believe strongly in right to work. I've believed in right to work my entire life. That's number one. Number two, so she wanted to eliminate it. She's a big sop for the teachers' unions. The NEA and the AFT, they have fought school choice. They have fought parental rights. They have fought the removal of pornographic material from our classrooms and from classroom studies. She's a big sop for them. She's a big mouthpiece for them. And so when it was learned that she was the nominee, Randi Weingarten was very excited. Now, so was the Teamsters Union, but I'm not so much worried about the Teamsters Union because there's a lot more overlap when it comes to our views and the Teamsters' views. I'm not talking about private sector unions here. I'm talking about specifically a public sector type union, the teachers' unions. Now, they went out in full force, 2.5 million members, not all of them, some of the Republicans, but most of them. They campaigned against Trump. They contributed against Trump. Weingarten was the first endorsement that Kamala Harris got. So if we're going to ban people who helped DeSantis and so forth from serving in the administration, how do you justify this? That's just my opinion. Now, I'm not lobbying against her, for her. I'm not lobbying at all. As I've made this point abundantly clear, President Trump should be able to get the team that he wants. But I just hope she's not one of these bad appointments. We saw a few of them in the first term, who sabotages his efforts because he believes in school choice. He believes in parental rights. He believes in cleaning up our classrooms and our school libraries from the filth and so forth and so on. She does not. Maybe she'll say she does, but she has a record. Now, I also read that there were a number of Republican leaders, quote unquote, that encouraged President Trump to appoint her. I'd love them to come out of the shadows, stop leaking, and tell us who they are. Tell us who they are. So-called Republican leaders. Well, they're not going to because they're cowards. So I just wanted to voice my concern about this. We'll see how it plays out. Maybe she'll do Beautifully. Beautifully. That's a big damn department with a lot of power. The Labor Department. And her position is not a moderate position. It's not a rhino position. It's an extremist position. She's only one of 6 Republicans who voted in favor of a bill that would federally eliminate state right-to-work laws. That violates federalism. That violates the right of workers, of laborers. That imposes from the top down, from Washington, D.C., a requirement that you must join an organization even if you don't want to join an organization. And she's all in with the teachers' unions. So this is problematic to me. I'm sure we could have found a different kind of moderate to liberal that may have assuaged some of the private sector union leaders, but this one is way out there. Way, 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 way out there. All right, I've said my piece. And for the media out there that will say, Mark Levin criticized Trump, I'm not criticizing anybody. I'm simply talking about her and what she stands for. That's my job. That's what I do. She's the nominee. She will probably, very likely, be confirmed. But, you know, we have radio hosts and TV hosts that are so gutless and so lack any kind of courage or independence or knowledge or anything else. They're going to keep their heads down. There's no need to keep your head down. I've said again, President Trump should get the nominees he wants. This is his government. He got elected. I didn't. He won by a landslide. This is the team he wants. So give him his team. If things don't work out, he'll be the first one to fire people. He's not like Joe Biden. He'll be the first one to remove people. He's removed them in the first term. He'll remove them in the second term if it doesn't work out. I'm just throwing out a cautionary note about her in specific. And by the way, I don't know what the president's been told. I don't know what his advisors said. I don't know any of it. I'm not involved in it. So who knows? But she is what she is. She is who she is. Now, when we come back, I want to circle back on Jack Smith dropping the case. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's not really Jack Smith dropping the case. It's the cowardly Attorney General, Merrick Garland. He's ordered the case to be dropped, just as he ordered the case to be brought. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Did you see what the Federal Reserve did literally days after President Trump's victory? It's lowered interest rates by a quarter. Do you know why it did that? It's worried about the economy. It's worried about the fact that jobs aren't being created. We're seeing all kinds of shifts in our portfolios, and it's important to stay aware. That's why I'm urging everyone to diversify and consider gold as one of your financial shields. Now, gold has weathered every kind of economic downturn throughout history. I want you to call Advantage Gold. They're the best of the best, folks. I've dealt with all of them. They're the best. They're my gold company. 1-800-900-8000. Get a free gold investment kit to see how you can get started with gold. I recommend Advantage Gold to anyone who's serious about protecting their wealth, and that's you. Call 800-900-8000 for your free gold investment kit, and you could even qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Call them now. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. You'll be very happy with them. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. You know, the Manhattan case against President Trump, we'll see what Mershon does in early December, actually second week, I guess, or thereabouts. I think this will encourage him to dismiss the case, what the feds are doing. That said, honestly, if we had followed the Levin path, this be over already. It'd be done. Supreme Court would have seen it. They would have dealt with it. And even more than that, they would have dealt with this specific case, but they would have made it clear that the entire process was violative of, supremacy clause, federal jurisdiction, and so forth and so on, so it wouldn't happen again. But I don't think that's going to happen unless Mershon continues to delay this, and I suspect at this point he may not. One other thing before we get back to the rogue prosecutor and what some of these rogue members of Congress have to say about it, and it is my job to expose them, I think. Russia now has North Korean troops It has Iranian drones. It has communist Chinese missiles and ammunition. And now it is apparently going to get Houthis from Yemen to help in terms of infantry attacks against Ukraine. I have to say, I'm not only surprised, I'm disgusted. Whether they be radio hosts or podcasters, whether they be TV hosts who are trashing Ukraine. You know, it's one thing to say, I don't think we should have anything to do with Ukraine or something like that. Ukraine is defending itself. It's defending itself. And they're trying to get arms and support wherever they can. If it's your position they shouldn't get any from us, that's perfectly fine. I don't agree with it. That's perfectly fine. But to then start trashing Ukraine as starting World War III is stupid. Ukraine didn't start anything. Ukraine gave up all its nuclear weapons to Russia in 1994. In a deal we urged them to sign. We put a gun to their head. And it was signed by Russia, the United States, and Britain that the nuclear weapons that were in Ukraine after the fall of the Soviet Union would go to Russia. But what did they get in return? They got in return an agreement that Russia, Britain, and the United States would defend Ukraine against its enemies in order to give up its nuclear weapons. That was the deal. Like it or not, 1994. So they gave up their nuclear weapons. Putin kills his way to power. Putin takes other parts of what were freed nations. He grabs Crimea, he grabs half of Georgia, among other things, and then he decides, I'm going to take Ukraine. Biden's in town. He just surrendered in Afghanistan. He gave the Taliban Afghanistan. He gave them all their weapons. He even gave them the biggest Air Force base probably in Europe. But it doesn't really matter, in Southeast Asia, I should say. And he sees all this. He puts about 125,000 troops on the border. Biden cracks some kind of joke. Just don't take it all or something to that effect. And he invades. There's Ukraine. Now it's Ukraine's fault. I mean, what is it? What kind of spell does Putin have over some of these damn fools? Why do they regurgitate what he says? I've been talking about this for 2 years now? Why all the focus on Ukraine as the enemy? Ukraine's not the enemy. They don't threaten us. They don't have nuclear weapons aimed at us. They don't have any nuclear weapons. Donald Trump is not an isolationist, folks. Some of his supporters are. He is not. He is not. He's not a hawk. He's not an interventionist. He just uses prudence, common sense to make his decisions. But he armed up Ukraine more than Obama did before he left office. Obama gave them blankets, pretty much. Trump gave them weapons. But the idea that Ukraine's going to start World War III, when Russia's all in, when China's all in, when North Korea's all in, when the Houthis are getting involved, when the Iranians are supplying these massive killer drones to overwhelm their defense systems, and they're aiming at their citizen centers. Ukraine's not aiming at anybody's citizen centers. When they do fire these missiles now in the last few days, they're aiming them at military depots to try and take out their ammunition. But it's like Hezbollah. Hezbollah is specifically aiming at citizens, at population centers, where Israel's not. But I don't get it. I really don't. I'll never get it. This love affair with this killer Putin. Like I said, you can have whatever position you want in terms of supporting Ukraine. I think we should. I'll be right back. The markets are volatile. They're shooting up wildly only to drop without warning. The Fed just cut rates yet again, this time by a quarter point. Why? Because the Federal Reserve is not confident the economy is strong. In fact, last month only 12,000 jobs were created, all of them in the government. That's why I'm telling you again, diversification is crucially important. And diversification with gold is what I do. And the company I use, and I've used many, the best one is Advantage Gold. Call them now at 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit to see how gold can help you diversify your investments and take advantage now. Now, gold has been helping to protect and grow wealth for people for thousands of years. And in these times, it could be more crucial than ever. When it comes to gold, I trust Advantage Gold. They're one of the top gold companies in America. They're who I turn to when I purchase gold. Call them now, 800-900-8000. Call 800-900-8000 now for a free gold investment kit to see how gold can help you with your investment portfolio, a.k.a. your bank accounts, your paycheck. And when you do, you could qualify for $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Folks, don't wait. Call them now, 800-900-8000, and tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
Mark Levin, the champion of liberty and true conservatism. Call Mark now, 877-381-3811.
There's a lot going on, folks. I'm bouncing around just a little bit, but we are going to... What is President... Weaving. We're weaving, as President Trump would say. A brilliant point. I had Tom Homan on Sunday on Life, Liberty, and Levin. And I brought up with him something that I remember from the Reagan years. And that is, as well as subsequent to that, you can cut funding off from a state that defies federal law or defies the execution of federal law. And so I put it to Tom Homan, and he agreed with me. I said, look, what you can do with these sanctuary towns, these sanctuary states, is cut off their funding. Cut it off. If they defy you. You know, on the one hand, they claim to be sanctuary. On the other hand, they demand federal tax dollars to deal with the hotels and the feeding and the say no. Not only don't they get it, but cut off federal funding. And he agreed with me. And so that took off. That was in almost every news organization, certainly online. I even think one Fox program repeated it, Mr. Producer, which is pretty interesting. I think John Roberts and Sandra Smith, they have a great show, by the way. I don't believe I saw it on Hemmer and Perino. Did you see it on Hemmer and Perino? I don't think I did, Mr. Producer. No. So there's a report now that congressmen, Republicans, because this is the way they operate, said, you know, we can cut off funding to these towns. Yeah, really? Well, it's good you thought of it. Not. You got to do, look, I spent my life litigating against these people, fighting these people on the left. You've got to use your brains. You can't just paint by the numbers. And so cutting off funding, particularly to a blue state governor, is a big deal. It's a big deal. Pursue them criminally if you can. I don't have a problem with that, but you're going to have a lot of problem with various judges and so forth. But cut off funding. Just do it. And that will have an effect. And that'll have an immediate effect, and the people of the state will need to know you elected these people. They got to follow federal law. The other point I made, which is important, I think the governor of Texas has been fantastic. This guy Abbott's been standing alone, duking it out down there hard. I mean, he's got other Republicans supporting him, but that's ground zero. Look at the mess with the Arizona governors. Absolute mess. Abbott has really been very courageous in what he's done. But what has he done? He's tried to enforce federal law because the feds won't enforce federal law. What do these Democrat governors want to do? They don't want to enforce federal law. They want to go off on their own. You know what that is, America? That's not federalism. That's a confederacy. It's the same argument they used in the Confederacy. Same one. That is, there's no justification under the 10th Amendment for what they're doing. None. There's federal law, immigration, supremacy law, supremacy clause. The Supreme Court has ruled fairly recently, about 10 years ago, maybe 12, that the federal government really has all the power in this regard. Great. So states want them to enforce it. When you look at what DeSantis does in Florida, these other guys, Kemp, what he does, they're trying to enforce federal law. Say, hey, feds, you got to enforce your law, secure the border, protect the nation, national security, and on and on. But that's not what these Democrat governors want to do. They're lawless. They're reckless. They should decide policy for the nation. They're Confederates. The Democrat Confederacy is back. But as I said, cut off federal funds. Cut them off. And so they did a report I just saw, Mr. Producer, said, oh, these two Republican congressmen say cut off federal funds. What is with these congressmen? Don't they think for themselves? They should be way ahead of me on this stuff. This is their job. All right. I told you we're going to be doing a little bouncing around, but I am weaving, as President Trump puts it. Representative Dan Goldman was an assistant U.S. attorney, former federal prosecutor with the Southern District of New York. He's a frighteningly stupid man, very partisan man. And so he's very upset that Jack Smith dropped the case, but it's not Jack Smith. It's the Attorney General of the United States. Smith put in his papers today that they consulted with the Office of Legal Counsel. This is the brain trust for the executive branch when it comes to the Constitution, and pretty much what they say is the final word. Most attorneys generals rubber stamp it, and I get it. They're also the most objective of the offices at the Department of Justice, although not completely, but more than most. And they said yes. The 1973 memo, the 2000 memo, those memos that Levin, I brought to your attention, brought to the whole nation's attention, because I remember them from way back, that they're still the law. We do not believe you can indict a sitting president, and that obviously applies to a man who was just elected president and is involved in a transition to become the president. And so he says, effectively, my hands are tied, there's nothing I can do. But you see, that's why he was racing to the courthouse. They were aware of those memos. They wanted to take Trump out, take him out, put him in prison before the election. Or they hoped destroy him so that people would vote against him. Now, we know that backfired. But you can't have this. He can't just walk away and say, okay, I give up. I can't do anything. No harm, no foul. Excuse me. There's a lot of harm and there's a lot of foul. And so it's very important that the next Department of Justice, and I'm not talking about recriminations or anything like that, to find out exactly what happened, who called the shots, look at all the material, whether it's electronic or documentary or whatever it is, and get to the bottom of this. Because I have a feeling the person calling the shots wasn't even the Attorney General. My guess, it was in the Deputy Attorney General's office. But whatever office it was, people need to be held to account. There need to be congressional oversight hearings. You can't just interfere with an election like this, and then when the people put an end to what you're doing, say, okay, fine, no big deal, I'm going to resign, see you later, back to The Hague. No! Look at all the time this took from President Trump. Look at all the money, our money that was spent. Maybe $100 million. Look at the damage that was done to the legal process, to the public's faith in the justice system. Look how it was politicized. And still, there have been rulings by the court that the Supreme Court shouldn't even had to have gotten involved in. And then you see Chutkan, her rulings. She bent over backwards, almost right up to the end. She twisted the rules of criminal procedure to accommodate the government. There was a lot done here. The abuse of power with the grand jury, the use of the Enron obstruction law, the violation of immunity. They were trampling all over the Constitution to try and get their man as they were hunting him down. You can't just let this pass, because it'll happen again. And this is my point with the Manhattan case. If you get it to the Supreme Court will put an end to it. Even if Merchan eventually rules the right way on December 9th or 10th or 15th or whatever he does, there's been damage done. So here's Goldman, one of the dumbest former federal prosecutors I've ever heard before. Cut one, go.
Well, look, I certainly understand why he did it, given the Department of Justice policy that you cannot prosecute a sitting president. I think it is a shame for justice in this country It establishes that Donald Trump is above the law.
No, it doesn't establish that Donald Trump's above the law, you a-hole. Doesn't establish that at all. It establishes that the federal government can't conduct itself the way that it did. To try and put somebody in prison who they knew was going to run, in fact, did run for president of the United States, and the public said no. And these protections, remember those two memos written by the Department of Justice, one was written half a century ago, 1973, and another was written a quarter century ago, in 2000. One by a Republican administration, one by a Democrat administration. It's been the holy grail for half a century, the Department of Justice. So how is it that Donald Trump's above the law? Was Obama above the law because he wasn't charged with crimes? He could have been. Will Biden be above the law after he retires, after he's out of office? He can be pursued. You think that's all right, Dan Goldman? Should he be pursued for his violations of the immigration laws and the consequences that flowed from that? The inhumanity, the injuries, the destruction of private property? Just listen to this guy. And I like the way they said he needs to be held accountable for the crimes he committed. He wasn't convicted of committing crimes. In fact, this whole thing was a sham to criminalize challenges to an election. Yes, we've had electors sent to challenge electors who've been chosen by the state before, 1876, perfect example. So that has happened. It's ridiculous. Or that you call a Secretary of State or a Speaker of the House and say, can't you find any votes? That's not a crime. They don't mean create votes. Can't you find any more votes? Because these elections, you may recall, particularly before reforms in places like Georgia, were going on and on and on. You're allowed to ask these things. You're allowed to challenge an election. In fact, almost every election's been challenged in the last 20 years. So what? You don't criminalize it. In the documents case, how ridiculous was that? Hello, one lawyer, me. I said that case was weak and preposterous. You had Bill Barr. This is a slam dunk. It's a slam dunk. Can you pass the Cheetos, please? It's a slam dunk. You should have just given him the damn documents. Should have just given him the damn... No. And it wasn't a slam dunk, and these guys don't understand motion practices, which I've done over and over and over in the years. They can make the difference, and in this case did make the difference. And two former attorneys general obviously disagree with Bill Barr and question even the constitutionality of the investigator. And the judge agreed, and she wrote a brilliant opinion. It could have been a law review article, but too many stupid people don't know how to read it. Now there's Zoe Lofgren. She's been in Congress for a very, very long time, undermining our Constitution every step of the way. What does she have to say from California? She's on MSLSD today. Nobody knows why. Who cares about Zoe Lofgren? I'm playing it because she's a foil. But why is she in a news program? Why, that she's still awake? Is that news? Cut two, go.
I'm not surprised. When Mr. Trump was elected president, I think it became clear that this prosecution could not go forward. You know, it's ironic that the top Republican in the Senate pointed out in the impeachment that he should be prosecuted. That what
She's talking about McConnell. So here you have a loser, Zoe Lofgren, quoting a loser, Mitch McConnell. Like that means anything. Like that means anything. Cut three, Chris Jansen with Lofgren. Go ahead.
You said last month you were disappointed DOJ hadn't started their investigation even earlier. I think you're definitely not alone in that feeling. Looking back, do you think that not charging Trump until more than 2 years after January 6th?
All right, stop. You see, this is the problem with MSLSD and the other constipated networks, like the Constipated News Network. Isn't the problem is we didn't start earlier to take him off the ball field here, the political field, that we didn't take him out earlier? Isn't that the problem? Now, notice Trump won in a landslide despite all this. But they're saying, isn't it a problem that we didn't put him in prison beforehand so he couldn't be voted for? Now, who's sick here? It's a huge mistake, she says. They waited 2 years to bring the charge of 2 years. We had to hurry up, get this damn thing done. Hurry up, get him in prison, hurry up. These are totalitarians, Marxists/fascists. That's what they are. That's what they are. And unlike so many who are giddy in the news business or the media business, the opinion business, I'm sorry, they're not going away. They're never going away. Evil never goes away. It may change its form, but these people are evil. They're not going away. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Did you see what the Federal Reserve did literally days after President Trump's victory? It lowered interest rates by 1/4. Do you know why it did that? It's worried about the economy. It's worried about the fact that jobs aren't being created. We're seeing all kinds of shifts in our portfolios, and it's important to stay aware. That's why I'm urging everyone to diversify and consider gold as one of your financial shields. Now, gold has weathered every kind of economic downturn throughout history. I want you to call Advantage Gold. They're the best of the best, folks. I've dealt with all of them. They're the best. They're my gold company. 1-800-900-8000. Get a free gold investment kit to see how you can get started with gold. I recommend Advantage Gold to anyone who's serious about protecting their wealth, and that's you. Call 800-900-8000 for your free gold investment kit, and you could even qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Call them now. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. You'll be very happy with them. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. Washington Compost. It took 4 reporters to write about this DOJ thing. Well, right there, Mr. Bezos, you can slash at least 2 of them. President-elect Donald Trump plans to fire the entire team that worked with Special Counsel Jack Smith. Good. To pursue 2 federal prosecutions against the former president, including career attorneys typically protected from political retribution, according to 2 individuals close to Trump's transition team. Number 1, there's too many damn leaks coming out of there. And number two, political retribution? No. It's in the name of justice. This should never have happened. And you don't get to hide as a civil servant with certain kinds of protection. Trump is also planning to assemble investigative teams within DOJ to hunt for evidence in battleground states that fraud tainted the 2020 election, one of the people said. And is there a problem with that? The proposals offer new evidence, they say, that Trump's intention to dramatically shake up the status quo in Washington is likely to focus heavily on the Department of Justice, the nation's premier law enforcement. Okay, hold on now. You just used the friggin' Department of Justice to try and take out a presidential candidate. You threw everything, the book, the kitchen sink, Judge Chutkan, and every other lunatic radical judge you could think of. You used a law that should never have been used, the end-run obstruction law. You went back to the Ku Klux Klan Act, and you used that. Then you used a federal contractor law. You had nothing except a partisan Democrat Party grand jury, an Obama judge. That's all you had. In Florida, you had a judge who's a real judge and said, wait a minute, what are you doing here, Mr. Special Prosecutor? You're appointed unconstitutionally. And Donald Trump is the problem? Now, this needs to be fixed. This needs to be fixed. No amount of propaganda and BS from the media and the Democrats and their members of the House and the rest of them is going to change the facts. You and I, we lived through this. This needs to be fixed. And let the chips fall on whom they may. I'll be right back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. As I explained at the end of last week, now Pam Bondi's under attack. Anybody who's nominated by a Republican to be Attorney General is always under attack. Always. If they can't take them out, they hope that they do enough damage to their reputation. Pam Bondi is a very good lady. She was a great attorney general in Florida. People raise an issue here, an issue there, so be it. But she's a outstanding choice. Now, that's different from like the Labor Department choice, who's a hardcore, leftist. Pam Bondi's a hardcore, and that's good. So she's under attack by Schiff, and this is very interesting the way Schiff puts it here. Let's take a listen to this. Cut 5, I think. Yeah, cut 5, go.
Some of these nominees are deeply problematic. I'll be interested in the confirmation process. Will Pam Bondi continue to tell the big lie even under oath? Is she going to continue to say that the Justice Department should be prosecuting prosecutors who brought valid evidence before a grand jury found probable cause to believe Donald
Once again, to underscore the point, these people never give up. They're evil. Adam Schiff is a very evil, stupid man. And this is all he knows. So he bangs his head all the time, but he doesn't care. He just got elected senator from New York, even though he's the biggest sleazeball. California, I meant. Even though he's the biggest sleazeball most of us have ever seen. And there's a lot of sleazeballs out there. And so he's on a crusade, and that's all that matters. Go ahead.
Is to go after them. So she's going to have to answer tough questions. Tulsi Gabbard, a great deal. That someone who has echoed Kremlin talking points, someone who has appeared to make common cause with someone like
Democrats have echoed Kremlin talking points for as long as there's been a Kremlin. Your hero Ted Kennedy actually conspired with the Kremlin, as Paul Kengor has written, professor, Grove City and American Spectator, and I've written, citing him among others, that Ted Kennedy literally worked with the Kremlin to try and defeat Ronald Reagan in his re-election. Literally worked with the Kremlin. But don't worry, Democrats are different now. Go ahead.
People, someone who has no experience whatsoever, not even on the Intelligence Committee.
And he says how she worked with Bashar al-Assad. She's going to have to answer for these things, obviously. And yet, Adam Schiff never criticized Joe Biden for funding Iran, for funding UNRWA, which funded Hamas, for funding the PLO, a.k.a. the PA, and violated the Taylor Force Act. How come he's never complained about any of that? Gabbard will have to answer for past questions and so forth. That's the nature of the nomination process. But what is Schiff's explanation? He has none. He's a puke. Go ahead.
Should be running those agencies. So they're going to have tough questions to answer.
Senator-elect Schiff, is there anyone on this list who at this very moment you think you could vote yes on? You could support?
Well, for example, I think Marco Rubio is enormously well qualified for the job.
What is going on with Rubio there? He won't come on the show, America. But Schiff is as sleazy as they get. But I'm sure he'll get some no votes among Democrats, but maybe this is why he was silent for 2 years, Rich. I'm serious about this. We couldn't get him on. And I wasn't going to attack in any respect. I just wanted to talk like we talk to other representatives of the public. But it sounds like he's a shoo-in. Sounds like it. So they're going after Pam Bondi. Schiff is, the others are. Amy Klobuchar, remember her? She's got a Kamala Harris problem, which is she curses just curses very badly at her staff. She always is rated among the lowest in the treatment of staff. But then she gets on TV and she's very good. So Schiff was on Meet the Press. Adam Klobuchar was on Deface the Nation. This is how it works. They bring the lowest of the lowlives on. And here she is attacking Bondi. Cut 6, go.
Pam Bondi will have a hearing and will be able to make her views clear. I think the things that I look at is someone competent, and are they going to uphold?
Now, you don't look if they're competent. That's not what you do. They want to turn every hearing into a Clarence Thomas hearing or a Brett Kavanaugh hearing. That's what they want to do, ladies and gentlemen. They're going to try and Kavanaugh. Pete Hegseth, they've already tried. I've looked at now the allegations against him. That's so full of crap, it's not even funny. It's not even funny. It's so full of crap. but it's Texas and it's Pam Bondi, and, you know, we got to go after it. But Marco's a good guy. We can vote for Mark. This is what's so weird. Go ahead.
It is so important. It's the lead law enforcement officer for our country. And does it concern me that revenge would be part of her mission? Of course it does. I hope that's not the case.
We can't have revenge. Why is it revenge when the same thing's done to you that you've done to other people? They're so worried about revenge. How can there be revenge? I thought the people of justice were honest, objective, nonpartisan. Revenge what? What's the revenge? Go ahead.
She wants to do is uphold the Constitution.
You don't want to uphold the Constitution. You don't even believe in all the Constitution. In fact, your party doesn't believe in even the people who wrote the Constitution. What the hell are you talking about? I love it when these left-wing Democrats talk about the Constitution. Remember what they ran on, eliminating the Electoral College? Remember when they ran on destroying the independence of the Supreme Court, adding 4 seats, packing it like a Politburo? Remember, America? They defended the appointment of Jack Smith, who was appointed unconstitutionally under the Appointments Clause. Remember that? Remember how they attack free speech? How they hate freedom of association if you're pro-life? Remember that? Or if you're a parent speaking at a school board? No, we got to clamp down on that. Second Amendment, they hate that. Fifth Amendment, due process. Equal protection, can't have that. 14th Amendment, trying to knock Trump off the ballot, for God's sakes. But they're going to make sure that Pam Bondi supports the Constitution. Really? They voted on an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, Jackson, who doesn't support the Constitution. They're trying to ram through every left-wing kook lawyer they possibly can and give them a judgeship, not because they support the Constitution, but because they're activists who will usurp the Constitution. Joe Biden blew up the Constitution. He refused to enforce her immigration laws, and it's his job to ensure that they're faithfully executed. Anyone complain about that? Did Klobuchar claim about that? No. Not in the least. So they don't believe in the rule of law, the justice system, the Constitution. It's all BS. And that's why they're on ABC's this week. They're not going to be challenged. They're going to be prodded. That's where I'll Meet the Depressed. Adam Schiff. Not going to be challenged. They're going to be prodded. Come on, we know what you need to say. Welker, what a joke. What a joke. And this other one on... who the hell is even on ABC this new? You don't have to look it up, Rich. I don't care. Just another drone. It was John Carl. That guy's a real mannequin. He's a real stiff. But there's more. There's Chris Van Hollen. Chris Van Hollen voted the other day to cut off all money in support and military aid to the state of Israel. Why? Because he and his wife are Islamist kooks. But he'll keep getting elected because it's Maryland. Ooh, Maryland, yes. Just run on abortion and you'll win in Maryland. That's it. Oh, okay. Good enough. Cut 7, go.
My view is this is what the vetting process is all about, the hearing process. The Senate, of course, under the Constitution, has the job.
Really? And under the Constitution, there's recess appointments, and you a-holes, you blocked at least 100 of Donald Trump's nominees last time around. Is that what the advice and consent clause is all about? Of course not. But I said this guy is a Marxist Islamist. He doesn't care. But notice how they keep wrapping themselves in the Constitution when they hate the people who wrote it, when they've denounced them for years, when they trash its protections. That is, it protects us, the Bill of Rights, among other things. But we want to see where they stand on the Constitution, don't you know? Go ahead.
On nominations, and I take that responsibility very seriously. I've been troubled by some talk.
No, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't. Every Democrat you rubber stamp, every Republican you oppose. Van Hollen is the worst of the worst. The worst of the worst. You're a liar. Go ahead.
Like Trump wants to short circuit that constitutional approach using this recess appointment.
How come you didn't object when Obama didn't? How come you didn't object when Clinton did it? How come you're only objecting now to the process? You're so full of crap. And I talked about that on Saturday's Fox show, as well as behind this microphone and on the Blaze. Pretty amazing, don't you think? Yes. But then we'll fall back on the racist card. And nobody's better than James Clyburn on falling back on the racist card. Because, you see, the Democrat Party has done so much for the black people, particularly in the last quarter century. Like nothing. Like zero, literally. What have they done? They've blocked school choice, which is aimed mostly in poor communities, poor minority communities that would benefit the most, where the money follows the family and the student, not the teachers' union, and not the bureaucracy. But they oppose it. Obama didn't oppose it for his own children, did he? No. Biden didn't oppose it for his own children, did he? No. But they oppose it for everybody else's children, particularly black kids, where they're not getting quality education. But don't worry, the unions are happy, especially happy now, but it's true. But what have they done for the black people, the Republicans? Cut 8, go.
How do you feel about the fact that there don't seem to be any...
This guy, Jonathan Capehart, a complete reprobate. Go ahead.
How do you feel about the fact that there don't seem to be any black jobs in a Trump cabinet, except for HUD?
Let's just wait a second there. This is the canard. If Donald Trump had 10 black people in the cabinet, they'd be attacking those 10 people because they wouldn't share the ideology of the Democrat Party and the radical leftists. I've seen the Democrat Party literally block black candidates that Republicans have put up for circuit court and district court positions because they don't share their ideology. I've seen it happen year after year after year. You saw what they did to Clarence Thomas. He's just not the right kind of black. So they lie. The leftists, the elitists, the Washington media, the Democrat Party, they don't want a black person if the black person doesn't agree with them, because it undermines the whole thing they're trying to push, which is what? A uniform ideology, the radical left ideology. And if you're black or Hispanic, or for that matter, Jewish, and you step out, you have a problem. There's something wrong with you because you're thinking for yourself. Doesn't mean you have to be Republican. Just means you're not one of them. I saw it over and over and over again. So Jonathan Capehart is an elitist fraud. He doesn't care how many black people Donald Trump appoint. He really doesn't. Neither does Clyburn. If they don't share the party, they don't share the ideology, it doesn't matter. You read my book, American Marxism, you'll see quote after quote after quote, example after example after example of what I'm talking about. Individuals who think for themselves, who are black or Hispanic or Asian, women, Jewish, they're the enemy of the left. And openly, but most often behind their backs, they smear them. They character assassinate them. That's what they do. In fact, particularly when it comes to Hispanics and the issue of an open border and so forth, they have special names for people like this, and they talk about them in their books, the professors and the elites, and they talk about them, well, you may have brown skin, but you have a white mind. Say what? That's right. That's right. You may have black skin, but you have a white brain. What are you talking about? How sick is that? Well, that's what they say. And that's what they teach. So, Jonathan Capehart, are there any room for any blacks in this administration other than HUD? Could care less. Look how they treated Tim Scott. They abused Tim Scott. Because Tim Scott thinks for himself. And I said Clarence Thomas. There have been others. Many others. They do the same thing. Well, I'll do it this way. Name to me one black person who the left has supported, who's conservative or Republican per se, and acts like a conservative because they're black. Name one. There aren't any. There aren't any. It's always a but. They're black but. Or they're Hispanic but they're a Jew but. Not B-U-T-T, B-U-T. And so, HUD. Just talk about HUD. Even if they're, look, Tim Scott ran in a primary for the presidential nomination. He did a great job, by the way. Maybe he'll get it next time. Do you remember Jonathan Capehart or James Clyburn or any of the others who claimed to speak for the entire black world? Do you remember them coming out and saying, hey, you know what? Tim Scott, let's back Tim Scott. He's a black man, let's back. Of course not. They would back Joe Biden over Tim Scott. In fact, they did. So let's stop playing games over there at MSNBC. It's not about race. That's an excuse. It's about what's between the ears. And if you're not an ideologue like them, they will do whatever they can to destroy you. That's the bottom line. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Folks, have you ever thought about what charities and causes you give your hard-earned money to? Pure Talk, my cell phone company, supports veterans. As a veteran-led company, that's their passion project. And that's why Pure Talk has slashed $10 million in veteran debt. That's why they donate tens of thousands of dollars every month to help prevent veteran suicide. That's why they donate $50,000 to MicroWorks, providing scholarships to veterans learning the trades after active duty. Now, isn't that a company you can get behind? Time to jump ship from these other three guys. There's a better option. Pure Talk gives you the same great coverage, America's most dependable 5G network, for half the cost. And you'll be supporting a company that is helping our vets. It's a win-win. Dial pound 250. Say keyword Mark Levin. You'll be connected to Pure Talk's U.S. call center. That's right. They invest in American jobs to better serve you. And remember, they're half the price of the big three. Go to puretalk.com/Levin today. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN. Switch to a company that invests in American jobs to better serve you. Again, go to puretalk.com/Levin. You'll get an additional 50% off your first month. Pure Talk, America's wireless company. Sonny Houston, whose ancestors owned slaves, by the way. My ancestors were slaves, helped build the pyramids, but that's a whole nother story. She is purportedly a lawyer. And according to Breitbart, she's now had to issue what they call 4 legal notices. Well, we have 2 of them. In other words, she puts her big foot in her big mouth and says things that could create a situation for the network, for the syndicate, that's ABC News, and for her, that would create libel. Cut 10, go.
Okay, Sonny, you have a legal note. I do have a legal note. Thank you, Whoopi. Matt Gaetz has long denied all allegations, calling the claims, quote, invented, and saying in a statement to ABC News that this false smear following a 3-year criminal investigation should be viewed with great skepticism. That DOJ investigation was closed with no charges being brought.
See, I'd sue her ass anyway, because that's pretty sarcastic. There's another one. I have a legal note. Matt Gaetz has long denied allegations. Another legal note. Pete Hegseth's lawyer said he paid the woman in 2023 to head off the threat of a baseless lawsuit. He has denied any wrongdoing. That's 3. There's a 4th. Why do they keep her around? I'm quite... She's stupid. She says stupid things. Says very, very outrageous. Well, maybe that's why they keep her around. I'll be right back. Folks, have you ever thought about what charities and causes you give your hard-earned money to? Pure Talk, my cell phone company, supports veterans. As a veteran-led company, that's their passion project. And that's why Pure Talk has slashed $10 million in veteran debt. That's why they donate tens of thousands of dollars every month to help prevent veteran suicide. That's why they donate $50,000 to MicroWorks, providing scholarships to veterans learning the trades after active duty. Now, isn't that a company you can get behind? Time to jump ship from these other 3 guys. There's a better option. Pure Talk gives you the same great coverage, America's most dependable 5G network, for half the cost. And you'll be supporting a company that is helping our vets. It's a win-win. Dial pound 250. Say keyword Mark Levin. You'll be connected to Pure Talk's U.S. call center. That's right. They invest in American jobs to better serve you. And remember, they're half the price of the big three. Go to puretalk.com/Levin today. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN. Switch to a company that invests in American jobs to better serve you. Again, go to puretalk.com/Levin. You'll get an additional 50% off your first month. Pure Talk, America's wireless company.
Mark Levin, the research arm of conservative media. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
Joy Reid, she's still there. She's still at MSNBC. Why they don't fire her ass, I'll never know. They certainly should. But she's telling you this Thanksgiving, couple days away. I can't wait. We're going to be celebrating, like you, all the wonderful things that we have, but also this past election. She has some advice for you, which I'm sure everybody will take to heart. Cut 12, go.
People are rightfully alarmed. They have a reason to be alarmed. And if you would vote for that, people may not feel so confident that they're safe with you. This is not crazy. This is legitimate feelings of fear of you and a feeling that you might not be someone they could trust if this thing goes way south. Autocracies go south real fast and things get ugly and people get asked to do things and turn people in and point people out and turn on them. And if you're voting affirmatively, gleefully for this, people might, may not feel so confident in you anymore.
Sick.
That's real, and you kind of have to live with it.
Sick.
So if you think that you can vote for what people see as their destruction and then demand that they still are cool with you and kiki with you and have Thanksgiving with you, I think you're kind of missing the point of what people are upset
shut up, you idiot. We don't need psychoanalysis from you. You're the one who needs psychoanalysis. What she's saying is, look, if you have a family member that voted differently than you, hate them, do not invite them to Thanksgiving, never talk to them again. What kind of a nut is this? Well, obviously her family's of one mind, right? All sit around the table, think the same thing, say the same thing. You know what that is, Mr. Producer? That's Marxism. Because she's a Marxist, in my humble opinion. Think the same thing. Whatever you do, don't speak out. So this is my point when it came to Capehart and Clyburn. You sit around the table. Let's say it's her table. And you have a different opinion. Do you think they're sitting there saying, you know what? That person's black, that person's white, no. Identity politics goes out the window. You're the enemy because of what you think and what you say. And that's my point with the Marxist left. That's my point with her, with Capehart, and with Clyburn. They use racism. You heard them. You heard Capehart and Clyburn. You hear her all the time. But they don't even really mean it all the time. If you're a minority person, you're part of her family, let's just say it's a person of her race at the dinner table. She's saying, I don't trust you. The hell do you think you are? You don't agree with me. It's not cool to be sitting down and breaking bread with that person. You understand? It's sick. And yet that's who she is. I told you, why do people watch these Sunday shows, by the way? I don't know why Reince Priebus went on ABC's this week. I don't know why any Republican goes on these shows. What is the point? They have no ratings. Their ratings are dying. Why give them any mouth-to-mouth here? I don't understand. And John Carl's one of the worst. You know, he writes these anti-Trump books, and he pretends he's a journalist, and he laughs it up when somebody defends Trump. He's a clown. And by the way, dumb as hell. But he's a clown. I don't understand. You and I, we want the death of this corporate media. We want real media, real journalists, a real profession where people try to report the news. They're not going to be perfect. We all have our biases. But you shouldn't lead with your radical partisan viewpoints, all right? I'm an opinion person. I'm not a news person. We talk about the news, but what could be more boring than just sitting here saying, oh, look, A happened and B happened and C happened, and yet that's the job of a journalist. You leave it to the rest of us, left, right, and in between, to give our opinions. And that's why it doesn't work anymore on these networks, because they've crossed the line. You can't tell an opinion person from a news person, as Joe Contra reminded me on Sunday on Fox. A Life, Liberty, and Levin. Do you know The View? Those 5 moronic yentas, that The View on ABC News is under their news department, their news division. That's the problem. News division. So here's Reince Priebus on ABC's This Week, which is supposed to be a news program, right? But it's not. It's a joke. Here's John Carl and Priebus. Cut 13, go.
This was while Trump was president, the Soleimani assassination, which Trump thinks is one of his big national security accomplishments, and a lot of people agree. You know, she said it was unconstitutional and an act of war.
Fine. That's what she said. But today she's saying something different, and she's resolved those different. She's resolved those different. Well, we're going to find out. Yeah. But one thing I would highly would suspect is that you wouldn't rise to a rank of an 05 lieutenant colonel if our intelligence agencies thought that somehow she was some kind of Russian asset, which if people are going to level those charges, they better be darn sure that they're accurate. And is a very
Nikki
dangerous
Haley
thing
didn't say
to do.
that. She said that it was a sympathizer.
But it's all insinuated, okay? It's this cutesy, hyperbolic nonsense coming out of the media and the Democrats who refuse to accept the fact that almost a majority of Americans have accepted Donald Trump and Trumpism. I think it's time to give this guy a month of peace and let the process play out.
You're asking us to be
Now they go to Jasmine Crockett of Texas, who's a radical kook, an absolute bomb thrower. A radical kook, an absolute bomb thrower. And see, this is the problem. We talked about this. I have friends who are telling me, coming on my Fox show, friends who are telling me there's a fundamental change in the media that's taken place. No, there's a fundamental change, I think, in the bureaucratic structure, I would argue, of some of the media. But unless these people are fired or broomed out of there somehow, it doesn't matter what platform they're on, how Comcast restructures MSNBC or any of the rest of it. It doesn't matter. It's the same people. And so we'll see, but I don't think these people are going away anytime soon. Here you have a landslide election. They act like nothing happened. They act like nothing, and they don't care. They don't care. It doesn't matter. You know, we used to say a president-elect, they ought to have at least 100 days. They don't do that with Trump. Trump comes down the escalator the first time. He's under a full-scale, brutal assault from all sides. And now he's busy working, picking his cabinet and so forth, spending a little time on the golf course and with his family, getting ready. They got a lot of plans. Some of the plans have been made public. Some of them haven't. And so, and he's under attack by the same party, by the same media. So they talk out more than both sides of their mouth. They talk out of their ass too, which is, we want to do things bipartisan where we can, but no, you don't. No, you don't. And the first thing you try to do, as I explained here last week and explained on Fox over the weekend and explained on Blaze, they try and pick off your nominees. Try and pick them off in order to damage you. That's why they do it. I mean, honestly, the party of Ted Kennedy and Chappaquiddick is worried about Matt Gaetz. And I'm not a big Matt Gaetz guy. You've heard me over the years. But so what? That's irrelevant. The party of Kennedy and Chappaquiddick. The party of carousing. Lots of carousing. Now they're suddenly, moral standard bearers. Moral standard bearers. The party that supported, that opposed Ronald Reagan and basically undermined him every step of the way and gave aid and comfort to the Soviet Union, gave aid and comfort to Ortega and Nicaragua, the party that couldn't wait to kiss Castro's ass. Now they're worried about Syria. I'm worried about all of it, by the way. They're not. I am. But they're not. But now they are. The party that's funding Iran, which basically owns Syria. The party that's funding Hamas through UNRWA. The party that's funding the Palestinian Authority that gives pensions to terrorists. And the more they kill, the bigger the pension. Now they're worried about Syria. I'm worried about all of it. But how did they come to why are they worried about part of it and not all of it? So this is what we get from these clowns. One of the things I don't like to do is play all these clips, but after these Sunday shows, there's so many jerks on there saying so many stupid things, I feel like I need to correct the record and confront them. Because none of them will come on this show. None of them. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Folks, have you ever thought about what charities and causes you give your hard-earned money to? Pure Talk, my cell phone company, supports veterans. As a veteran-led company, that's their passion project. And that's why Pure Talk has slashed $10 million in veteran debt. That's why they donate tens of thousands of dollars every month to help prevent veteran suicide. That's why they donate $50,000 to Micro Works, providing scholarships to veterans learning the trades after active duty. Now, isn't that a company you can get behind? Time to jump ship from these other three guys. There's a better option. Pure Talk gives you the same great coverage, America's most dependable 5G network, for half the cost. And you'll be supporting a company that is helping our vets. It's a win-win. Dial pound 250. Say keyword Mark Levin. You'll be connected to Pure Talk's U.S. call center. That's right. They invest in American jobs to better serve you. And remember, they're half the price of the big three. Go to puretalk.com/Levin today. That's puretalk.com/Levin. Switch to a company that invests in American jobs to better serve you. Again, go to puretalk.com/Levin. You'll get an additional 50% off your first month. Pure Talk, America's wireless company. Congressional Republicans and former Trump appointees have spent the last year building out their response to the movement protesting Israel's war in Gaza. That's very nice, Simone, actually. It's very nice, Simone. Are you talking about the those who are supporting Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah? Is that what you're trying to say? And now that Donald Trump is returning to the White House, they warn that protest leaders, activists, and those who helped them raise money could face an onslaught of federal investigations and possible indictments. Now that I would love to be in charge of, Mr. Producer. An NBC News review of congressional hearings and letters, along with lawsuits filed by organizations led by former Trump officials, provides a preview of which federal laws a second Trump administration could use when pursuing investigations and potential prosecutions. This is the enemy within, you see. These organizations that are funded by terrorist regimes and terrorist groups, and these individuals. You've got groups like Students for Justice in Palestine, CARE, a Hamas front group. You've got them all over the damn place. And according to NBC News, we just sit on our asses and let our country be taken over by terrorist sympathizers. Judging from what has been pushed thus far, they write, there are several legal measures most likely to be used once Trump returns to Washington. One would be deporting foreign college students in the U.S. on a visa. Gee willikers, I propose that. After they found to have openly advocated for Hamas or another U.S. designated terror group, or after they participated in unauthorized campus protests and were suspended, expelled, or jailed. Good idea. Glad I thought of it. Another measure would be to pursue federal prosecutions of demonstrators who block synagogue entrances or disrupt Jewish speakers at events. A third approach is to charge protest leaders and nonprofits that aid in fundraising for protest groups with failing to register with the Department of Justice as an agent of a foreign principal. That's called FARA. And a fourth avenue is to open investigations into protest leaders who are in direct contact with U.S. designated terror groups while advocating on their behalf. Does that sound problematic, extreme, or right-wing to you, my fellow Americans? Doesn't that sound like, finally, somebody's going to enforce the law? Round them up. Round them up. I love that phrase. The faceted law enforcement approach is a marked departure from the Biden administration's response. Some of the nation's leading civil rights groups told NBC News they're gearing up for a flood of legal battles to protect the protesters. You mean the terrorist sympathizers? And, of course, we get the American Criminal Liberties Union. Well, let them try. Let them do it. President Trump's going to enforce the law, whether the ACLU and other American criminal liberties type like it or not. Reed Rubenstein, who's now with American First Legal, he's a great lawyer, who held high-ranking positions in both the Justice Department and the U.S. Education Department in the first Trump administration. Well, he says under American First Legal, have in the past year filed 4 lawsuits and provided a glimpse into how the Trump administration could differ from its predecessor. Good, and good again. If you're here on a student visa and you have connections to or promoting terrorism, we're going to kick your ass out of here. Wow, that sounds like a good thing to me.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. You know, I wouldn't be the lawyer I am today if it wasn't for former Attorney General Edwin Meese. Some of you are saying, oh, good. Most of you are saying, really? Tell me about it. I was a very young man. In fact, the Department of Justice was filled with young men who became part of a revolution. Not an anti-American revolution, a revolution to reinstitute constitutionalism in our system. Because the law had gone completely haywire with the left instituting progressivism and so forth within the law, activism within the law, mocking the Constitution, rewriting it as they went along, amending it, if you will. And so one man becomes Attorney General and he stands up and he says, no. We're going to reverse course. And there's a book I'm very, very partial to, written by 2 great professors. At the time, they weren't professors, friends of mine. Steven Calabresi and Gary Lawson, outstanding professors, law professors, writers, authors. And they put together, which had to take a tremendous amount of time, a book called The Meese Revolution, The Making of a Constitutional Moment. You hear people talk about originalism, constitutionalism. You didn't hear about it very much before Ed Meese became Attorney General. And he mainstreamed it, and he insisted that it have force and effect in everything the Department of Justice did, including the appointment of judges and justices, and he came under attack. So this book is intriguing. I mean, it reads like a novel, but it is chock full of facts. It takes you on a journey, and it's my honor to have Professor Steven Calabresi, an old buddy of mine, one of the authors here. How are you, my brother?
I'm wonderful, Mark, and it is such an honor and a privilege to be on your show. I am thrilled to be here tonight.
Well, thank you. And I was thrilled when you asked me to write the foreword to this book.
Well, it's a beautiful foreword, and I loved it. And I just wanted to say I was 27 years old when I started working for former Attorney General Ed Meese, and 29 years old when I finished and went off to work with Ken Cribb on some Reagan projects in the White House. And we were part of a revolution. Ed Meese is quite simply the most extraordinary Attorney General in American history, and I say that having been a law professor for 34 and a half years and having researched the other 85 people who've been Attorney General. And he's also just a remarkable human being, one of the kindest, most modest, most self-effacing people one can imagine. So, yes, I do think that Ed Meese caused a revolution in constitutional law, and he introduced originalism, and he made it popular. He took ideas that Judge Robert Bork and Professor and then Judge Antonin Scalia had championed, and he gave them a bully pulpit, and he put the whole weight of the Reagan presidency behind them. So I think we're both of us probably feel very indebted to have worked for such a great man.
Absolutely. And by the way, it wasn't easy, was it? I mean, he came under brutal attack, including from Justice Brennan, one of the Supreme Court justices, because Meese finally said enough is enough, stop. We're going to use the Department of Justice to advance the cause of the Constitution. That's why we're here, which was, at the time, a very unique idea, right?
Absolutely unique, completely unique. And it was he made the decision only after consulting with his top advisors, Brad Reynolds and Ken Cribb, and it was a very deliberate decision, and he gave a speech at the American Bar Association's annual meeting in July of 1985, and he graded the U.S. Supreme Court on its work during the previous term. And he considered three areas of law: federalism, for which he gave the court an F; criminal procedure rights, where he gave the court a B+; and inventing rights, where he gave the court an F again. And it was extraordinary for an attorney general to have the courage to do that. And he then announced that the solution to the Supreme Court's lawlessness was that the court should turn to the original intentions of the framers of the Constitution. And he refocused constitutional law on what the founding fathers intended the Constitution to mean when they proposed it in 1787, and what the 14th Amendment meant when it was proposed to the states and ratified in 1868. And he announced in that ABA speech in July of 1985 that he was going to direct the Justice Department to, in all of its briefs and in all of its OLC opinions and in any actions that anyone took, they were not to follow Supreme Court case law, they were to follow the original intentions of the framers. And one example of that was that a question was presented to the Office of Legal Counsel as to whether Congress had the power to authorize a national lottery. And at the time that question went to Chuck Cooper at the Office of Legal Counsel.
He was the Assistant Attorney General for the Office of Legal Counsel. Go ahead.
Yeah, he was the assistant. And at the time that the question went to Chuck Cooper, Supreme Court case law said that Congress could do anything at all it wanted, and that there were no limits on the power of the national government, and that the states were helpless. And Chuck Cooper wrote a very detailed memorandum for Ed Meese years before the Supreme Court decided United States against Lopez, saying our national government is one of limited and enumerated powers. And I've looked at the list of limited and enumerated powers, and there's no right to create a national lottery. This bill is unconstitutional, and if Congress passes it, I, Chuck Cooper, suggest to you, Ed Meese, Attorney General, that you tell Ronald Reagan to veto the bill. And the bill was never passed and never heard about again. Mm-hmm. But that's an example of Ed Meese putting into place originalism even before the Supreme Court was reformed and before it began to pay more attention to federalism. And the change that he has caused in legal thinking, both by law professors and by judges, is absolutely monumental. So the world is indescribably different today from the way it was when you and I first went to work for him.
Yeah, we like to talk about, often, Clarence Thomas, of course, the great Antonin Scalia, Sam Alito, and so forth and so on. But people need to understand, hold on now, what people in the audience need to understand is that Ed Meese embodied all of this. And that these people wound up where they wound up because of Ed Meese, that he helped put them on the courts and on the Supreme Court for this maximum effect. Correct?
Correct. absolutely correct. The reason he nominated William Rehnquist to be Chief Justice, or he persuaded President Reagan to nominate William Rehnquist to be Chief Justice and Antonin Scalia to be on the Supreme Court, was to be sure that there would be a voice for originalism out there for the next 30 years. And Justice Scalia served for 29 and a half years. And Meese and Ronald Reagan didn't know if they were going to get any other vacancies when Chief Justice Berger retired. And they wanted to be absolutely sure that there would be at least one originalist on the Supreme Court. And that's why they picked Rehnquist to be chief and Scalia to be an associate justice, because he was 10 years younger than the great Robert Bork. And I had the privilege of having Robert Bork as a teacher in law school at Yale. And I also had the privilege of clerking for him on the D.C. Circuit. And then I had the privilege of clerking for Justice Scalia on the Supreme Court. And Justice Scalia and Judge Bork and Justice Clarence Thomas are all very, very great men. But it was Ed Meese who made originalism popular and got it noticed and elevated it. And he, Justice Scalia and Judge Bork and Justice Thomas are great, great men. Ed Meese was the person who put them helped put them in place and helped create the whole set of ideas that underlies their jurisprudence. And he was able to do that because he was essentially Ronald Reagan's right-hand man. Mm-hmm. Ronald Reagan didn't do anything either in foreign policy or domestic policy, or certainly with respect to picking judges, without first getting the advice of Ed Meese. And he was central to President Reagan's administration. He was of critical importance to it in every respect.
And this is one of the reasons the pushback was hard. We're going to take a break here briefly. We're talking to Steven Calabresi, law professor, but co-author of this fantastic new book that just came out, The Meese Revolution, The Making of a Constitutional Moment. If you want to understand what we talk about here all the time, but the comprehensive undergirding movement, you're going to want to read this book. Just take your time. You can go through it. It's a perfect gift for the holidays, for Christmas and Hanukkah, or even Thanksgiving. You can order it on Amazon.com. Again, it was an honor to write the foreword for the book. I've written a lot of books, but when I wrote this foreword, I said, I better get this right, because these two professors are going to be looking at this book, my old buddies, and I got to make sure it sounds okay. But it flowed. It was easy for me because we lived this. And you made the point before we take the break here. Ed Meese was not only a legal giant, the nicest person you'll ever meet, and yet they attacked him, they brutalized him, ethics investigations. And I want to revisit that when we come back, Steven Calabresi, because they did it because he was effective. If he hadn't been effective, if he hadn't been a revolutionary in support of constitutional law, they wouldn't have cared. Get the book now. You go to Amazon.com, The Meese Revolution. I'm telling you, if you have interest in what we discuss here on Fox or on Blaze, you're going to want this book. This is my mentor. It's Steve Calabresi's mentor, the mentor of many, many people, Supreme Court justices and judges. Get to know the man and what he did. The Meese Revolution. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
The book is The Meese Revolution. I recommend it strongly, strongly, strongly. Get it tonight. It's perfect for Thanksgiving. You can have it overnighted to you. Get it for Hanukkah. Get it for Christmas. Just get it if you have even the slightest interest in your Constitution, what it means, and the battle to retain it, quite frankly, from the Supreme Court on down. This book is going to intrigue you. You have difficulty putting it down. It's a smart book. It's a factual book, but you're going to see the journey that was taken by the modern-day pioneer of originalism that is discussed now all the time in academia, on the courts, and on this program, and that's Ed Meese. Now, Steven Calabresi, Professor Calabresi, is one of the authors. You know, Steve, when we were taking the break here, I pointed out how such a nice man, ethical man, smart man came under brutal assault from the Democrats, from in Congress, from the media and so forth. You want to remind people how bad that was?
Yeah, essentially the left and the media tried to do to Ed Meese sort of what they tried to do to President Trump. They drummed up phony criminal charges against him. They used an unconstitutional law that Congress had passed in the Carter administration to get special prosecutors appointed to investigate phony allegations against him. And they were trying to bring him down because they knew he was Ronald Reagan's right-hand man, and they knew how important he was to President Reagan's work, and they hated what he was doing in reviving the Constitution and the original meaning of the Constitution. And so they brutalized him the same way they brutalized President Trump. But Ed Meese is as courageous and virtuous a human being as I have ever known. When the meek inherit the earth, he's going to inherit all the land west of the Mississippi. He never sang his own praises, never took credit for anything. When praised, he always said it was President Reagan's doing or it was his staff's doing. Never said it was himself. And even though he was completely selfless and utterly virtuous and honest and decent and wonderful in every possible way, he was painted by the left as being a criminal and vile, and the left even came up with posters saying Meese is a pig because he supported police departments and cared about law enforcement. And they just brutalized him, absolutely brutalized him. And this is what they've done to anyone who's tried to stand up for the original meaning of the Constitution. They did this to Judge Robert Bork when he was nominated by President Reagan to the Supreme Court. They did it to Justice Clarence Thomas when he was nominated to the Supreme Court. They did it to Justice Brett Kavanaugh when he was nominated to the Supreme Court. They tried to do it against Judge Eileen Cannon in the Southern District of Florida when she bravely dismissed the unconstitutional charges brought against President Trump. This is the way the left behaves. They try to criminalize politics, criminalize disagreement, and depict anyone who doesn't agree with their far-left, socialist, progressive instincts as being a criminal or a villain. And so it is remarkable to have lived through it. And there was a wonderful cartoon near the end of his service as Attorney General that showed a room with all the lights torn off the ceiling and all the furniture broken and devastation everywhere, and Ed Meese happily and patiently at work at a desk. Mm-hmm. And it was entitled The End of the World. Mm-hmm. And the idea was that Ed Meese was unflappable, and he really was. He just did not care what the left did, but they were brutal to him, and that's part of why I really want.
The book is The Meese Revolution. You can get it at Amazon.com right now. I strongly recommend it. He was the greatest attorney general, certainly one of them in history, wasn't he, Steven Calabresi? Did we lose him, Rich? Okay, well, let's go get him back. I know we have to take a break, but I'm not finished talking to him, so let's see if we can find him, okay? Okay, we have to take a break in 30 seconds, folks. I want to bring him back. This is just probably one of the few shows where you can actually dig into a subject like this. But in the meantime, the Meese Revolution, again, this is about the whole kit and caboodle. Your Constitution, judicial nominations, judicial confirmations, the brutal battle that took place so we could get a Scalia and a Clarence Thomas and so many other good judges and justices. It started with Ed Meese.
The Mark Levin Show, where the Reagan Coalition meets every day. Call now, 877-381-3811.
Welcome back. The book is The Meese Revolution, The Perfect Gift. It's to yourself or to anybody else you want to inform or is interested in being informed about how we got to the point where we actually have battles over the Constitution and get constitutionalists on our court. It wasn't always that way. The book is called The Meese Revolution. I wrote the foreword. My guest, Professor Steven Calabresi, is one of the co-authors with Professor Gary Lawson. You can get it on Amazon.com immediately. They'll deliver it tomorrow or the next day. Maybe have it sent to wherever you're going to have Thanksgiving. And my final question to you, Steve Calabresi, is you know a lot. You follow a lot of attorneys general. You're familiar with the history of the Department of Justice. Is he not the greatest or one of the greatest attorneys general in history?
He's by far and away clearly the greatest attorney general in history, and that's because he was not only did he revolutionize constitutional law and produce originalism and change thinking in law schools and judges and in courts and completely change the culture, which no other attorney general has done in the same way. But he was also indispensable to Ronald Reagan in the winning of the Cold War against the former Soviet Union and in every other way. And Attorney General Meese is the only attorney general in history to serve on the National Security Council. And the aide that attended those meetings with him said that any time that Secretary of State George Shultz disagreed with Ed Meese about something, President Reagan was always on Ed Meese's side of the disagreement. And President Reagan so trusted Ed Meese that when he had to pick his third White House chief of staff, he asked Ed Meese to interview the candidates and help him do it. And it was Ed Meese who helped him hire Howard Baker. And Treasury Secretary Jim Baker had nothing to do with that and was not consulted by President Reagan. President Reagan, when he was in a crisis, trusted Ed Meese and relied on him. So he was a great, great man, not only because of revolutionizing the law in a way that no attorney general has done, including Homer Cummings, who was at Franklin Roosevelt's first attorney general for 8 years, but also he served a lot longer than Attorney General Bobby Kennedy, who tragically saw his tenure cut short by his brother's assassination. Ed Meese was at Ronald Reagan's side for almost the entire 8 years of his presidency, and he was helping President Reagan on everything as his right-hand man. And it is the greatest and most unnoticed achievement that any attorney general has ever done. The only attorney generals who even come close are Bobby Kennedy and Homer Cummings, Franklin Roosevelt's attorney general. And no one today knows who Homer Cummings was, and he didn't stand for any ideas. And he picked Supreme Court justices like Felix Frankfurter, who was an advocate of judicial restraint, and William O. Douglas, who was the greatest judicial activist of all time, and they disagreed with each other on everything for the next 30 years. Mm-hmm. Ed Meese picked originalists and originalist judges, and he made originalism a core part of the Republican Party's legal plank. And he just revolutionized constitutional law in a way that it is unrecognizable today how different the world is from the way it was in 1985 when he became Attorney General.
And just a couple of names. Obviously, you mentioned they promoted William Rehnquist to Chief Justice, Ken Starr to the Circuit Court, Scalia, of course, and then to the Supreme Court. There's so many big names that people know of now and think of now that they probably would have never heard of before. And I just want to mention, because we have to go, that Ed Meese's right-hand man is a great man, too. Kenneth Cribb was a dear friend of yours and mine, and who really was just an exceptional, brilliant young man, an attorney, and so forth. Wasn't he unbelievable, Steve?
Ken Cribb is amazing. He's extremely talented and brilliant, and he was very, very helpful to Ed Meese. And it was such a privilege to work for Ken and Ed for 2 years. I think that the 18 months I spent working for Ed Meese and Ken Cribb were the best job that I ever had. Better than being what I am now, the Doyle Winter visiting professor of law at Yale Law School, far and away. More important to me than my clerkships, even on the Supreme Court and the D.C. Circuit. The best 18 months of my life was working with Mark Levin and Ed Meese in the Justice Department.
I was pretty rowdy back then, too, wasn't I?
It was a privilege to know you back then, and it's such an honor and privilege to be on your show, Mark.
You know, you're fantastic. You're just a great guy, and we're going to bring you back. I want people to get this book, The Meese Revolution. Folks, you're gonna love it. Go to Amazon.com. You can grab a copy right now. And Steve Calabresi, God bless you, the best to you and your family, and happy Thanksgiving. I should mention John Richardson, too, a fantastic friend of ours.
Sure. Sure, absolutely. Yes, he was also indispensable. But happy Thanksgiving, and God bless you to you, too, Mark. You've done
all right, my
wonderful
brother.
work. Yeah.
Take care of yourself. You'll learn about the man that launched 1,000 constitutional conservatives. That's what you'll learn. Most people know nothing of him today because he's so modest. He's elderly now. Ursula Meese, they're like family to my family. And I just want you to learn about the man and know about the man and the impact he's had on your country, which is enormous. The Supreme Court we have today with that majority, that's a result of Ed Meese. Some of these great circuit court judges we have and the way they think and analyze the law, that's a result of Ed Meese. This is why I speak the way I do and say the things I say. We have the capacity to take this country back. We need statesmen. We need leaders. We need people with courage. Ed Meese did not have bipartisan support. All the Democrats didn't come out and say, yeah, I can live with him. That's a good guy. And I will tell you this. I've said it once before during my 20-some years in this business. When Ed Meese decided to step down, he'd been under brutal attack. He decided to step down because he didn't want to hurt George H.W. Bush's chances at getting elected president. He didn't have to, but he stepped down because of all the political attacks he was taking, and it was near the end of the Reagan administration anyway. And he went to see Ronald Reagan, and I was one of the lucky people who got to go with him. His wife was there, his daughter was there. His more than a secretary, confidential assistant was there, Ken Cribb, who you heard me talk about, John Richardson, a friend of mine, but I was there. And Ronald Reagan said to Ed Meese, I'm sorry you've had to go through this, meaning all these attacks. This is Reagan. And I knew they were attacking you because they couldn't get to me. Two great men in that one room. Reagan understood. He really knew everything. He understood that probably one of his best friends, who'd been so loyal to him, Ed Meese, was being brutalized and attacked by the same bastards who brutalized and attack Donald Trump. And this is why I don't relent. This is why I don't bend. I've seen this before. I've seen it up close and personal. I know what these people are. I know they are evil. And I know what they want to do to you and this country. And it takes some brave people standing up against it. We've never seen anybody like Donald Trump. And when it comes to being Attorney General of the United States and the law, we never saw anybody like Ed Meese. We never have. The book is The Meese Revolution. I hope you'll grab your copy off Amazon.com. It'll show up right away. Don't be intimidated by it. It's a substantial book, but it's one page at a time, and you're going to learn more than you ever even dreamed of. I read it to write the foreword, and I learned more than I ever would dream of. That's a fantastic book, by the way. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Don't forget, folks, seriously, grab your copy of The Meese Revolution. Go on Amazon right now and just grab it. It is a substantial book, but it is truly a walk through history that's very important to you. I know. It's intriguing. It's quite a journey. The Meese Revolution, Amazon.com. It's posted on our social sites. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I won't be back the rest of the week, and I'm going to tell you why. When I got this injury, which I'm trying not to talk about and bother you, it was quite severe. It was 100% tear of the tendon that's linked to the right quad and the knee. So effectively, my knee and my quad were detached. Now, I've had all kinds of pain. I've had open heart surgery. I've had gallbladder removed. I've had kidney stones. They're all extremely painful. But this took the cake, because all those nerve endings tore. I missed 2 steps. That was it. 2 steps. Falling is a big cause of injuries and deaths in this country, and you need to think about it during Thanksgiving. But that's not what I'm trying to convey. The times that I wasn't on radio was because I was in so much pain I couldn't sit for a long enough period of time. I had to keep my leg up. So gradually I came back doing 1 hour, doing 2 hours, and so forth. I didn't do TV for a couple of weekends, and then I did that too. I have to stand up a lot when I do the show. It's getting much better. I have very excellent PT, first with Marwin at home, and now with Larry, who's really top-notch. And so it's getting better. And I just decided it was time to step out. I pretty much, not exclusively, but mostly have been living in 2 rooms. My office and a bedroom in the basement. And I said, that's enough. And so I will be going to New Jersey to spend Thanksgiving. Not all my family, but a good chunk of my family. To thank God for our country, for this election, and family. And so it takes me time to get there. It takes me time to get back. I'm not going to explain how I'm getting there and getting back, because I don't want people who may not like me to be bothering me. But that's why it can't be a quick trip. But this is a long way of saying to you, I thank you, this audience, for being there. I thank you for your patriotism. This is a massive show that's heard all around the world. Every corner of this country. It could be the middle of the Bronx. It could be way out. Cheyenne, Wyoming. It could be anywhere. We're in Alaska. We're in Hawaii. But I feel like we're all one. That we're one big family. That we love our country. We love our values and our morals. And we demonstrated it a few weeks ago when we said enough is enough. You don't get to steal our country from us and turn it into something that we don't recognize anymore. I'm so proud of you, my fellow Americans, because if this election had gone the wrong way, I felt it would have been over. I really did, in my heart and soul. But now we're back. We'll celebrate our Thanksgiving. And we are blessed by God Almighty. I don't care what faith you are, even if you have no faith. You're God's creatures. You love liberty. You love your family. I love all of you too, and I want to thank you. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, emergency personnel, our truckers, the men and women in Ukraine. I, for one, am with you. Our brothers and sisters in Israel, we have your back. And you, the beautiful American people, the Yanks. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and God bless you.